Some years ago, I was living in a parish in Kerrisdale. And as you're probably aware, Kerrisdale is quite a nice neighborhood. There's a lot of nice houses in there. It's kind of a more wealthy neighborhood. And oftentimes I'd be walking down the main street in Kerrisdale, and you'd see a lot of nice cars. Some Ferraris, some Lamborghinis. And sometimes when you saw these cars passing by, these amazing sports car, you'd see one of those novice signs on the back. An N for a novice. And it would just blow my mind that these young people, and oftentimes they were students driving to UBC, would have these amazing cars. So I started to become very judgmental, and whenever I saw these cars going down the road, I'd kind of interiorly, I never did it exteriorly, thankfully, but kind of shake my fist at them, feeling kind of judgmental, really looking down upon them because they had all this money and were so young. Well, one day I was driving to UBC, and my car broke down along Southwest Marine Drive. So my car broke down, it turned out my clutch was kaput, it was gone, and I had to get out of the road and push my car to the side. I didn't want to get a tow truck in the middle of the road there, so I got in my car and I started pushing, and I was about a block away from where I had to turn off to go to a side street. So I pushed my car, and I get about half the way there, and it's really difficult for me. The hill was a bit higher there. And all of a sudden, a young guy comes running down towards me down the road, and he says, "Can I give you a hand with your car pushing?" I'm like, "Thank you so much." And so we got there, and we were able to push the car. We pushed it up to a side street there. And then I thanked the guy very much. He was a young guy. He was a student at UBC. And he was saying, "Okay, what happened to your car?" And I said, "It broke down. I need a tow truck. But I really am late for a meeting at UBC. I need to get out there." And he said, "Well, I'm going the other way, but I can drive you out there. It's no problem." And I said, "Okay, thank you so much. That's wonderful." So we walked to his car, and it's a Lotus sports car, and it has an N on the back. So you can imagine how I felt at that time. All this judgmentalness I had with the kind of a certain select group of people who kind of had this lot of money. And here it was that one of the people who helped me was exactly from that group. I think if we're honest with ourselves, we can all have this sort of judgmental nature at times about whole groups of people. And I think when I look at my own life and I'm honest, I can say I can do that with large groups of people. It could be people maybe who have a certain political view, who vote for a certain political party. I can be very judgmental, and I can just write them off, and I can think nothing good can come from them. Or maybe you might be a sports fan and you have a certain team and you can't stand anybody from the other team. So anybody who would support that team, you kind of write off as well. We can do that in the church as well. We can think, okay, certain Catholics who are like that or think like that, no good can come from them. We've got to kind of write them off. We exclude them entirely. This sort of polarization or this grouping where we look down or kind of exclude other groups seems to be becoming more and more common, especially with social media. People kind of a lot of times comment on how this is becoming a worse reality. But really, this has been the case always. And the gospel we heard today, the gospel of the Good Samaritan, shows that this was a challenge for Jesus' time as well. And the gospel story of the Good Samaritan is incredibly challenging when we look at it. It challenges us very personally, because all of us at times can look at different groups, exclude them, look down upon them, as I do as well. Jesus, in the parable of the Good Samaritan, has an incredible, radical message. So we hear about this man who's going from Jerusalem to Jericho. We're so familiar with this story. He's beaten and he's left on the side of the road for dead. And then Jesus presents in this parable two people who should have known better, the priest and the Levite. They were religious people. They knew the law. They knew that they should have been helping this person who was down. And remember, Jesus is trying to illustrate Deuteronomy 6, love God with all your heart, and also Leviticus, love your neighbor as yourself. The priest and Levite should have known that love of neighbor entails helping this person. But of course, what do? They go to the other side of the road, and they avoid the person and help. And finally, it's up to the Samaritan who sees this man in need, who helps him with incredible generosity, puts him on his own animal, brings him to an inn, is willing to spend all this money to care for a stranger that he's never met. And of course, kind of the main point of this story is how other Jewish people saw Samaritans. So at Jesus' time, some Jewish people, some of Jesus' co-religionists, not all of them, but some, looked down upon Samaritans. They looked at Samaritans and they thought, they're outcasts from God's community. Nothing good can come from them. But Jesus shows that good can come from those groups that we might have cast aside. Jesus, in the story of the Good Samaritan, shows us that we should expect that God's Spirit is working outside our in-groups, working outside our community. This first is kind of the way that this parable is an examination of conscience for us. Do we, I know I do, kind of look at different groups and think nothing good can come from that group? The parable of the Good Samaritan teaches us, yes, in fact, we might find people in these groups who are following God even better than we are. So it's a wake-up call and a challenge for us. Of course, this parable as well challenges each and every one of us to be that Good Samaritan. We're able to overcome divisions and harm in our world when we can be like that Good Samaritan was. As many of you will know, Fred Rogers, when he started Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, kind of modeled it on this gospel story. Fred Rogers actually trained to be a Presbyterian. I believe it's Presbyterian minister, if I'm not mistaken. He was definitely in seminary. And he saw his TV show as a way of performing this ministry, that we should be neighbors to one another. And he wanted children to do that. And Mr. Rogers would often share a very beautiful story from his childhood. He was sharing how when he was a young boy, he was watching news on TV, and it really scared him, kind of upset him, and it troubled him. And he went to his mom to talk about it. And he shared with his mom how he saw this difficulty, this struggle, and how it upset him. And his mother responded to him, always look for the helpers. Regardless of how bad a situation is, there are always helpers out there doing good and assisting those in need. Those are really those Good Samaritans. And Mr. Rogers would tell this story to encourage the children that he was teaching on television, but all of us to be those helpers. Let us then listen to Jesus' words today in the parable of the Good Samaritan. Let us allow this parable, as Jesus meant it to kind of challenge us, make us feel a bit uncomfortable at times. That can be important. But most of all, let this parable challenge and encourage us to be those Good Samaritans, to be those helpers to those around us.